Hello everyone, my name is Shwang Joshi and I'm co-founder of Law Community and I welcome you all on Lawyer Speaks. Today we have invited a very special guest, Mr. Ishant Diwan. He is a former officer in the Union government and now working as a lawyer in Luthra and Luthra. We are going to interact with Sir to know more about his journey.
My first question is, how far your journey in the field of law so far has been, and how the current COVID situation has affected it?
The journey so far, as they say, it's been a long and winding road. This wasn't my first choice. I remember till even I was maybe 24. I didn't really think I would, become a lawyer, go study law. But basically, like life led me to it. To be honest, I did my bachelor's in commerce from Hindu College. I always thought, either an MBA or my first choice was UPSC, of course. I wanted to be in the civil services. So I took a while, I took my time, I started preparing towards my final year. I It wasn't even UPSC as much as like I had a larger like thing in my head that I want to be like in public life, in policy making or stuff like that. So yeah, so that's what I did. I prepared. I cleared this SSC exam. I joined the central government as an officer in the Ministry of Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises. I worked there for a couple years. Was having a good time. I was very young. I think I was 21 and a half, 22 when I got selected. So good for me. I had a nice confidence boost. I was in the ministry. I was an officer. So it was going well. I was still preparing for UPSC on the side, but I think somewhere in that when I was in the ministry, when I was working there, I was in Udyog Bhavan in Lutyens, and I think it was there somewhere that the thought came to my mind that I've never really thought about it, but why not? If not UPSC, would I rather stay here and be an officer, or should I become a lawyer? Because मतलब I used to think कि अगर officer बनना है तो IAS बनो, नहीं तो maybe litigation could be good. So I think somewhere around that I decided कि let's give it a try. And oh, by the way, interestingly, based on some friends of mine who were preparing for the entrance of law schools, I had even given my entrance of LLB in CLC, Campus Law Center, back in 2012. In 2012, I gave my entrance in CLC as well as for that SCC exam. I cleared both, and I chose to go work in the government than rather come study law. But then, like a full circle, after 3 years, I thought, no, law. Then I again came back and gave the same exam, and then came to study law. Interestingly, the second time I gave my exam, the rank I got the first time I gave my exam was much better. I got a All India 28 rank in the 2012 exam, in the Campus Law Center exam, and in 2015 I got a 38 rank. So I was like, damn. So that's how I came to study law. Then had a good time, made really good friends. Didn't really study as much as I should have. Maybe I was still half in my mind about UPSC, so I was still preparing for that. But yeah, so that's how I came to this career. Been really loving it since. I think it's a perfect amalgamation of what I wanted to be like in public life. You can contribute to policy making, you can have your own career, that entrepreneurial streak which I think I have, or to make something of my own, to build my own career, which was one of the reasons why I didn't want to work in the central government for that long. So which is why I quit. And I think it's a very nice mix of those things. I can still be in the public life, I can contribute maybe later on, hopefully.
How the current COVID situation have basically affected you in these times?
um there are I think there are multitudes in this question. It's not a There's no one way in which it has affected any of us. There are various like levels to how it has and it will keep affecting our profession or people around us. I am in a firm now since a year. We were always careful to have it all digitized since the very starting. That's how we did it since way before, especially my team. We were always working on our laptop. We were always sharing live drafts, working, collaborating on a draft together, sitting at various places, stuff like that. So, uh, operationally, it hasn't affected at least us, at least me at all. It's still the same level of efficiency, uh, still the same level of collaboration. Of course, that office feel is missing. You miss your colleagues and stuff like that. But courts have been functioning very well, at least in Delhi, which is India is a big country. There are courts in villages, in towns, so litigants are affected, lawyers are affected. But I think it will be uh, partial of me to say that no, we were also as equally affected. We were not. We were still doing better. The way our practice can be affected is clients paying capacities go a little down, businesses suffer. But I think anyone who's well placed, whose clients are, if you do quality work, you'll all come back to it, I guess. I hope virtual courts are here to stay. That's a good initiative. I hope like physical and virtual things can go together. Like right now, I can appear in Punjab and Haryana High Court. I can appear in Bombay High Court. I can appear in Delhi High Court, being here. But otherwise, a lot of time goes into travel and stuff like that.
So, your journey after graduation from being an advocate in Supreme Court till working in a
Yes.
top-tier law firm as an associate, what aspect of the daily job of being an advocate or an attorney interests you the most?
I think all of it. And since we're still new to it, so right now is the time to just soak it all in, all aspects of practice, of counsel practice. When I was practicing independently with Mr. Atul Kumar, I was in his chambers. That was an entirely different thing. I would be running in all around in Delhi throughout the day. Like I remember, I think half of what I was earning was going into my car fuel expenses. All we had matters. His practice was very varied, so we had a lot of work in almost all forums. That really helped me a lot. I had already I had went to work with Mr. Atul Kumar in that sense that I want to start with a bang, in the sense that I want to start arguing. I want to start because I think I had that thoda sa advantage of age. I came to study law when I was 24, 25. I had already been working in the government. I knew kind of my deal. So, so that 1 year was immensely exciting. I have argued everywhere from an SDM court to the Supreme Court, and that too before justice. Like my first arguments in the Supreme Court were fortunately or unfortunately before Justice Arun Mishra. So stuff like that. It was very fun. How to handle a lot of work together. I had a lot of independence to deal with clients. All that was my favorite. Having switched to the firm LNL, I think my favorite part is the people I work with. Yeah, I think my partner Bharat is amazing. Just lots and lots to learn. The kind of how we prepare for a matter, that's my best part. I go to courts a little less, but that time spent in office, how to utilize it best, I don't think I could have learned it anywhere else. Just the amazing quality of that we at least aspire to, reach in the quality of our drafts, in the quality of our research. So I think that has been the favorite part of my work here in LNL.
Tell us about the greatest trump of your career so far and how
Oh,
you made it
it's too
happen.
soon to have a greatest triumph. Yeah, I'm only 2 years in practice. It will be immodest, and it will not be. It won't be wise to think that there has been any triumph. The triumphs I've had are the strides one makes in decision making, in how in understanding how the profession works, in being able to keep yourself agile, flexible, quick, don't get stuck up on a thing. Even in career choices, I knew my first year I wanted to learn procedure, I wanted to be in courts, I wanted to get a feel. Then I think I knew that after I spent a year there, I wanted to, get into the completely other side of litigation industry. If there has been a triumph, it has been that I think I have been smart enough to make good decisions. I have been not, I have not contained myself in any box, and have tried to do all kinds of work, and just that is it. I don't think there has been any other triumph in terms of, a matter or a client. Those things will come and go, and they will keep happening throughout the life, I hope.
So, working as an associate for L&L, there might be the situations in front of you where you disagree with the superior's view over the legal matter. So, how do you handle the disagreement with that and over the matter?
Firstly, by knowing that, you have more to learn than to contribute, maybe. So you should always know that. You should always be. There is a thing which I think once even Bharat and I discussed, my partner at LNL, that what happens in the initial years of your practice of your career is, and you should have the wisdom to understand that the unknowns are too many. You don't even know what all you don't know, you know. So to presume that what I am seeing, the picture I have in front of me in my mind is the complete picture, is just, so you might be able to think that, okay, whatever I have in front of me, I am thinking or deciding to the best of that ability. But then there are so many things which you are not seeing. So firstly, just always have that humility to know that, disagreements are not a big deal, and as a matter of rule, you are more likely to learn when you listen to your seniors. And but I think again a lot of it depends on your team dynamics. I think I've been blessed to have a team where we've to disagreed on so many things throughout our entire team, on strategy, and luckily we even involve ourselves in strategy right at this stage. But we've disagreed on strategy, on even drafting. Should you include case laws in a? Should you draft comprehensively? Should you draft in a skeletal way? Lots of ways to think about it, and there is no right way. I know senior advocates who prefer that if they are being briefed on a file, they would say that keep the filing skeletal. Don't say too much. Just say the bare necessities. And there are partners and seniors who are like, every single thing should be in the draft. All the case law you rely on, every single thing. So different manners of different strategies. That's all it is. For example, at my previous chamber, my senior would say, don't say too much in the draft, and don't let the other party know which case law you're relying on, what all you might come up with. Keep them prepared, keep them in a compendium, go hand to the judge when you're arguing. Here, Bharat has an approach that he's like, you should inculcate every single aspect of your arguments in the draft. Arguments, completely, yes, he's right. But about case law, now his point is very wise. He's like, if you don't fight just the case before you, you strategize for the coming battle. If you lose here and you go in appeal, you can always, and if the bench here did not rely on the case laws or did not distinguish every single case law you cited, that's a ground for challenging the judgment, right? If you only cited the judgments in oral arguments, if you only handed over a compendium, it is possible that the bench might not notice them. The bench notices, disagrees, and doesn't care enough to, distinguish them all in the judgment. Because ideally, if I have relied on a case law, as a judge, the bench has a responsibility to distinguish how to explain why they do not agree with the case law. Either I've cited it wrongfully or my reliance is misplaced. So Bharat has that strategy, and he's right in his sense, but but that doesn't mean that the other strategy is wrong. So you again just be flexible, understand the bench before you, understand who you're arguing before, understand your client, understand the matter. Do you think it's likely to go in appeal, and take decisions accordingly.
So, what is your view on the changing trends of international commercial arbitration in India? And what do you think are the future holds for international arbitration in India?
Very fashionable, talk about international commercial arbitrations. India, all of the legal fraternity here has been trying to um, basically somehow, establish India as a choice seat of preference for many international parties. But honestly, I don't see it happening now. I think it's more talk than reality. I think so. Again, I need to understand what is the context of your question. For example, when you talk about international commercial arbitration, are you talking about Indian companies who have to arbitrate against their adversaries or against their former colleagues or whatever? Is that the question? Or see, because a lot of international commercial arbitration is not just parties who are Indian companies or Indian subsidiaries and then fighting other people. The true sense of international commercial arbitration or becoming a hub of arbitration is how Singapore is. The companies are not in Singapore. The parties are not in Singapore. An American company and a European company fight, and then they say, no, let's not fight here or there. Let's go to Singapore and have our arbitration there. That's how a hub is made. So if that is the sense of your question, then I think India has a long way to go. Where India has an advantage is we already, because we're such a huge market and there's so many companies and there's so much interest in international organizations to come and invest in India. So Indian parties make up a bulk of the arbitrations which happen in India, if any. But that happens by default, maybe, or by convenience. By choice, the if we want to be a hub of international arbitration, we should be a place of choice. International organizations, companies, corporates should feel that, okay, India is a place where we find good arbitrators, where we find good institutional support, where we find judiciary which is supportive and not very interfering. That's how you become a hub of international arbitrations. We're talking about scope. I think we have a lot of scope. We have an excellent array of lawyers, of arbitrators, of councils. Uh, the pool of talent is there. Institutionally, I think if you the Delhi International Arbitration Center, even the High Court Center, Nani Palkhiwala Center, the organizational support, institutional support is also there. The change we need, I think, or the improvement we need is in the approach, in the attitude of the judiciary, even of the lawyers and even of the parties. I think that is where the trend should emerge. Work should be done on just inculcating that attitude of, arbitrating. Or at least, for example, even as students, when you're studying law, when you're practicing law as a lawyer, apart from knowing that, okay, arbitration is the new thing, do we know why arbitration is preferable to litigation? Except that age-old thing that, okay, litigation is slow. But has that really been the case? Have arbitrations been really quick in India? Especially especially the post-arbitration challenges, 34, 37, 36, section 9s all over the place. So that attitude will come from understanding. So you have to inculcate the understanding in the legal fraternity as a whole, that why arbitration? How does it benefit organized corporations? How does it benefit lawyers? How does it benefit the legal system overall? Arbitrations are deemed to be expensive, but it's the opposite actually. There's no court fee. If there is a dispute of 5,000 crores, if you take it to Delhi High Court, you'll have to deposit court fee. There is no court fee in arbitrations. That's one of the main reasons corporations go for arbitrations. But we don't know this. We don't discuss about court fee. We don't. That's not one of the things in our mind of when we talk about the advantages of arbitration. We just go on a theoretical sense of, all right, arbitrators are more experts. They're not. How many arbitral tribunals in India have domain experts? Mostly they're all retired Supreme Court judges, retired High Court judges. Then what about if there is an infrastructure arbitration? I don't see many infrastructure domain experts in the panel. If there is a other kind of projects, or a marine arbitration, sports arbitration is an interesting area just coming up. But again, lots of work to be done.
So you're also specialized in white collar crimes like inside trading, money laundering, etc. So would you like to share any experience of yours related to white collar crimes, and how well do you think has the development been in this part of law?
Firstly, very interesting area of practice. Maybe one of my favorites. White collar crime, white collar litigation, is dispute resolution is amazing. It's lots to learn there. Very complicated matters. To clarify, I haven't really worked on any insider trading matter. I've worked on money laundering matters, CBI, corrupt POCA matters. FEMA, foreign exchange related matters I've worked on. If you want anecdotes, firstly, of course, to understand there can be no actual anecdotes. Sensitive areas, and clients are usually sensitive about all this. But there have been good development. There has been very good development in the law of money laundering. There was a good, interesting dispute over PMLA and IBC, and which will prevail. There, Justice Gobar's judgment came, and that has been an interesting thing to follow up on and keep track of. Otherwise, Poca matters. Like, for example, if you talk about anecdotes, I think recently only we were doing this thing where I think we actually explored on wiretapping, phone tapping and the constitutionality of it and how to challenge it. And uh, so we're still trying to strategize on that part. I think that should be very interesting, because you take it outside the realm of just white collar defense and you take it to constitutionality of a thing. And uh, there have been judgments recently also, which now there's a judgment which has been stayed, but so then, so from, for example, from PC Act, you come to Telegraph Act, you come to Information Technology Act, and so that's how you learn how like all these statutes are interconnected and how to comprehensively come up with a strategy of defense for a client. And I guess that's where the fun is in white collar defense.
So, is there any specific case that has impacted your practice of law on a daily basis?
Bharat and I were doing a matter in Aurangabad High Court. I think it was an amazing experience, out and out. It was a criminal prosecution by the state. We were the complainant there. So the accused had, prayed for quashing of the FIR, and we were trying to defend that. And the course that matter took, there were IT Act offenses involved, IPC offenses involved. Uh, we took the matter to I think to a new level altogether. We argued on which offenses will over sorry, will prevail over the other, if there have been, if something is finally established. uh, we It was a very complex matter. We were appearing for a corporate client, and there were data theft allegations. We had to go through, I don't know, thousands of computer files, databases, and the way we just prepared the matter, how we strategized it. We fought on interpretation of laws. We argued on the essentials of each and every offense, and we traced down history of 30, 40, 50 years of Supreme Court judgments, and argued for 5 hours at a stretch, 4 hours at a stretch, in a new high court where no one knew us. And we were able to do very well. And we've actually now gotten that matter referred to a larger bench in Bombay High Court, because of the complexity of question of law involved. Like, we actually, so there was a precedent which we thought was not the right precedent, but by a coordinate bench, our bench felt, forced to, obviously they shouldn't go against it, because even though they might think it's wrong, it is still binding on them. So we were able to convince them to refer the question of law, to frame a question of law, refer it to the full court, have a reference. So we were able to do that. Now we're waiting after this lockdown and COVID subsides. I think we'll get up on it again. So that was an amazing experience. What I learned from it was just how deeply can you prepare for a matter. Like, there is no, like, superficial preparation won't work. Superficial arguments won't work. And that approach, I think, has been, at least, yeah, that case has been monumental in that way for me. It's just, I think it's made me a much better practitioner of law.
So, you have diverse experience in working in a high court, Supreme Court, law firm, whether it's ministry. So, what
Yep.
suggestion would you like to give to the law students or upcoming lawyers? Uh,
My advice is going to be very generic. Firstly, I feel, just do everything, or at least be up for everything. Don't say no to anything. If you want to intern at a think tank, intern at a chamber, intern at a district court chamber, intern with a senior, intern at a law firm, intern in the corp. Even if you want to do litigation, intern in the corporate side of corporate verticals of firms. If you want to be in corporate, intern at litigation side, moot a lot. Uh, but besides all that, I think the best thing law students should do is just have lots of fun in law school. Once your career starts, that might not happen as much. Have fun, make friends, live it up. Really, live it up. It's very important. It's important to be healthy. It's important to be in a good frame of mind throughout your law school, throughout your career. If you're in a chamber, if you're in a firm, if you're a solo practitioner, it's important to have fun with all of it.
Thank you so much, sir, for having a wonderful conversation with us. And I'm pretty sure it will definitely gonna benefit lots of young minds.
Thanks. I hope so. I hope so. Thanks a lot for getting in touch with me and asking me these wonderful questions. I've had fun. I hope you had too.
Same here, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.